Welcome to this Southwest Desert video on the story of Fray Marcos de Niza, a Franciscan priest who in 1539 embarked on a perilous journey through the American Southwest seeking the mythical seven cities of gold, known as Cibola. This account comes directly from the detailed report Marcos wrote after his expedition. Through this episode, we will recount his remarkable tale just as Marcos described it in his own words centuries ago. Please leave a like or follow. If you enjoy this, hit the subscribe button to hear more great tales. Our story begins in 1539 within the Viceroyalty of New Spain, comprising Mexico and parts of Central America under Spanish colonial rule. For years, rumors had been circulating of wealthy indigenous cities somewhere north of Mexico, perhaps vestiges of the legendary seven cities of gold sought since the 8th century, when 7 bishops supposedly fled Moorish forces in Spain with a contingent of followers. These persistent tales of cities abundant with gold, silver, and gems continued to ignite the imagination of Spanish conquistadors and Catholic missionaries in the 16th century. Eager to locate any grain of truth behind such legends, the Viceroy Antonio de Mendoza sponsored an expedition headed by Fray Marcos de Niza, a Franciscan priest who had previous experience in the Americas. Marcos readily accepted the challenging assignment, enticed both by missionary zeal and prospects of fame should he verify the existence of such rumored cities. Accompanying the priest was a Moorish former slave named Estevanico, referred to as Estevan, the lone survivor out of just 4 men who endured an arduous 9 years wandering the wilds of the American Southwest after a disastrous 1527 Spanish maritime expedition. Regaled during this odyssey as a powerful healer and magic worker, Estevan cultivated an aura of shamanistic authority that lent credibility to his second-hand sightings of wealthy cities, later dubbed Cibola. The Viceroy calculated Estevan could employ this stature and familiarity with indigenous peoples to help locate any evidence behind those persistent stories of cities rich in resources. On March 7, 1539, Fray Marcos, along with Estevan, another friar named Fray Dorado, and a large contingent of native porters, soldiers, and interpreters embarked north from the town of Culiacan in western Mexico towards the Arizona and New Mexico deserts. Estevan took the lead as the expedition's scout into the vast unknown terrain, while Fray Marcos followed around a month behind. Fray Marcos later wrote that he and Estevan agreed upon signals to indicate if the Moor encountered settlements reflecting different degrees of wealth as measured by Spanish standards. According to Marcos, if it were but a mean thing, Estevan should send me a white cross of 1 handful long, and if it were of any great matter, one of 2 handfuls long. And if it were a country greater and better than Nueva España, New Spain, he should send me a great cross. Working ahead of the main party, Estevan dispatched messengers within several days, confirming discovery of a new province 30 days' travel distance containing major cities, relaying a towering cross signaling expected bounties even greater than the Aztec capital. Encouraged by this news, Fray Marcos pressed northwards through difficult terrain and uncertain tribal receptions, still waiting to rendezvous with Estevan near the purported cities where they could both observe the rumored riches. However, before rejoining his scout, Marcos instead encountered fearful native runners, reporting that Estevan had been warned to stay away from a Zuni Pueblo called Hawiku, but had refused to heed these threats. More wounded members from Estevan's group soon appeared, confirming the Moor had suffered mortal injuries in a violent clash at Hawiku provoked by his attempt to enter the settlement against explicit objections. Although deeply shaken by his scout's dramatic death, Fray Marcos insisted on pushing toward Cibola to finally witness this destination for himself, thereby justifying the entire expedition back to New Spain authorities. After 12 exhausting days trekking north, a determined Marcos reached a high enough vantage point to glimpse the mysterious Hawiku complex that had just spelled doom for the overconfident Estevan. In Marcos's report on Cibola to Viceroy Mendoza, he describes the settlement's impressive scale and architectural features as best his distant inspection allowed, claiming, "I followed my way until I came within sight of Cibola, maketh show to be a fair city, and is better seated than any I have seen. The houses are builded in order, all made of stone, with diverse stories and flat roofs." Yet still shaken by his previous courier's fate, Fray Marcos declined to fully approach Hawiku himself, admitting, "I returned with much more fear than victuals." Though Marcos only distantly observed this reputedly resplendent settlement, he had now visually confirmed a sizable inhabited place broadly matching prior second-hand tales of large, wealthy cities in the north. His tantalizing relayed descriptions electrified the imagination of colonial Mexico. The next year, Marcos led an immense military contingent under Francisco Vázquez de Coronado on a full-fledged expedition to conquer the civilizations Marcos certified during his initial reconnaissance. Instead of submitting gold and silver riches for pillage, however, these Zuni and Hopi Pueblos complexly organized their lives around agriculture, kin networks, and rich cultural traditions rather than European notions of status and material wealth so enthralling to the invaders. With no cities made of literal gold waiting to deliver riches into Spanish coffers, Coronado declared Marcos a deceiver and the expedition a debacle. Yet despite this indignity, Fray Marcos still trailblazed Spanish ambitions by verifying bases for legends of advanced settlements in the uncharted northern deserts, thereby opening the door for eventual expansive colonization and missionary activities in what is now New Mexico and Arizona. I hope you enjoyed this telling of what Marcos himself recorded during his trek towards the Seven Cities almost 500 years ago, when expectations and realities tragically collided on the remote fringes of Spain's ascendant New World empire. Thank you for joining me on another journey through the Southwest Desert. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a like or comment. I would love to hear from you. Hit the subscribe button if you would like to join me on more adventures. Happy trails!